A reading of mercy rather than martyrdom. Reading Genesis 4 with care by Izaak Connoway. We often zip through well-known Bible stories, but when I reread Genesis 4 recently, I was taken in by its beauty. I offer you the fruit of me reading it with care. First off, in reading any biblical narrative, we have to look for the protagonist and bear in mind that the story is about them. For example, this story is not about Abel's martyrdom. The original readers would have realized that a character whose name means vapor probably does not have an important role in the story. This story is about Cain. When I reread the story, I felt compassion for Cain because his sacrifice was rejected. However, I later realized that God also had compassion for Cain, but not so much that he was going to redefine proper. A bit of background is needed here. See, God's choice of sacrifice was not an arbitrary show of favoritism. To look with favor means to regard as proper. While Cain just offered some random fruit, Abel offered the fat portions of the firstborn of his flock. Abel's offering was precious and in keeping with the requirements. Cain was understandably devastated. However, God did not leave Cain alone in his sense of rejection and disappointment, but mercifully reached out to him. Like a father, the Lord spoke the truth in love to Cain and reminded him that if he would do what is proper, he would be accepted. In our modern world that emphasizes humanity's right to free choice and demands tolerance and pluralism, these words might seem cruel, but there's a deep mercy in them. Back then, just like now, God had provided a way of having fellowship with Him and being welcomed, but there was only one proper way that was acceptable to Him. In a further show of mercy, God warns Cain that if he chooses not to do what is proper before God, there is a force waiting to overpower him. God personifies sin here and cautions Cain that he must master it. But Cain does not accept God's words of correction and his invitation to fellowship. He lets sin personified pounce on him. He chooses vengeance. After Cain murdered Abel out of envy, in yet another show of mercy, God approached Cain with an honest query, rhetorical though the question might be. Cain, however, did not use this chance to confess. He shunned God's mercy once more and replied with biting sarcasm. Failing to receive the proper response, the Lord then issued a judgment. Because Cain murdered his brother out of jealousy, shedding his blood on the land, Cain would no longer be able to successfully cultivate the land because of his wickedness. He was cursed to wander around restlessly. After judgment was issued, Cain finally softened up and showed remorse. He finally appreciated the weight of what he had done. He realized that he would no longer live in God's presence. Regarding his fear of being killed, God never said Cain was going to die for what he did, but perhaps he realized that murder was a capital offense. As a last act of mercy, perhaps because he had shown some remorse, God put a mark on Cain that would protect him from being killed for his actions. But he still had to leave God's presence and be removed even further east of Eden than his parents and wander around restlessly. His fellowship with God and humans was irrevocably damaged. I hope this blog gave you a greater appreciation for just how merciful God was to Cain and is to us today. May we have soft hearts so that when God's Spirit convicts us and tries to nudge us back on track, sometimes through others, we would cry out for mercy and not be clever about it. May we give in to his tug so that our fellowship with him and our fellow spiritual siblings would not suffer damage. Let us master that which would damage our fellowship and have us wander around restlessly through our lives by submitting our lives to God. Let us be living sacrifices, which is our proper service to God, and not conform to the world around us, that is not open to correction and will only devote themselves to the God of mercy on their terms.